my channel, Enjoy Watercolour Painting. I'm Diana, I'm a watercolour artist. I live and work here in southwest France, and today the sun is shining and I'm thinking about the coming of spring. So the subject for today's demonstration tutorial is a walk through a bluebell wood. So join with me and let's paint. I came across this picture, this half-finished watercolour in my portfolio. It's a woodland scene with bluebells, but it's just the start of the painting, and I thought, okay, this is going to be my theme for today. Springtime, the new leaves of springtime and the colours of a bluebell wood. So we start with a picture which is just half finished. I have another piece of paper here, Arche rough grain 300 gram watercolour paper, and I'm going to step by step take you through the stages to get to this point, and then we'll use this picture to continue to the finished painting. So all the journey will be covered. I have my paints all ready to go. I have a green palette here and transparent yellow in the corner, ultramarine blue, and also Windsor blue green shade, a yellow palette, and here we have permanent rose and ultramarine blue for our bluebells, and a darker palette, Payne's Grey Indian red. So I've already started to get the colour going on the palette. It is important to have a whole range of greens. So we're going to start from the beginning with our new piece of paper, and then we'll do the detail later. So let's paint. The most important thing I have to do at the start is to make sure that my palette is full of different shades of green and the yellow palette is ready to use. Preparation of the palette is really important, especially if you want to work quickly and with a variety of different colours at the same time. So I am making a puddle of each colour on the palette so that I can mix colours together, produce different tones, different nuances of colour. This is something I emphasise a lot with my students, because everyone's keen to start painting, and sometimes that procedure is shortened too much and they're not prepared enough. But now I'm wetting the paper, the watercolour paper, and just starting with the yellow. It's always good to start with yellow. We would lose the yellow very easily. It can be swamped by other colours. So I've just spotted in clean water and yellow, just in a very random way, and then going to my greeny yellow too, so that the colours can combine on the paper and produce the effects of the first leaves of spring. This is very, very loose, working without any real plan, certainly no pencil work, because we just want these new bright green colours, well, not so bright really, they're quite subtle really, but the new leaves of spring which are just appearing. So I'm dipping into the different colours on the palette, and then in the middle of the paper just washing the colour down a little, because this is going to be my destination, my point, my focal point to take us through the picture. Of course, because it's a bluebell wood, I want to introduce the blue early on, so I'm looking at my mix of ultramarine blue and permanent rose to give me that lovely bluebell colour which is hovering between purple and blue. Adding more green and letting it run across the wet paper, but not worrying too much about leaving spaces where the white of the paper shows through. And the little liner brush comes into play as well to give us some detail on just the damp paper now. It's not shiny wet anymore. So the little spots of blue, i.e. the bluebells as they are pushing up through the grasses in the wood, can peep through the green. Just let it all blend and move, and the watercolour changes as we work. The colours are blending nicely. Adding a little bit more contrast now to some areas, because we do want that depth of colour. As I've said, this painting is very subtle and gentle in its shades, because that's how spring is at the start. No dramatic colour until later on. But we want to have those contrasts to give more depth. A little liner brush again is very useful for this. Now the paper is dry, and I can start to think about putting in the detail of the trees. I go back to my focal point, the point that's going to take the eye through the picture. And I've just done a line, a wet line with a hint of brown Payne's grey mix. Actually, it's Indian red Payne's grey, but it makes a kind of a subtle brown colour. And I'm starting to suggest the trees which are further away in the woodland. It's good to work on this from that line, because the line carries paint, and I can just take it up with my small brush into the leaves that we've already created. Some of them will be more important than others, but whilst that line is wet, and you can see that it's shiny wet, it's kind of a reservoir of colour which I can use to create the impression of trees which are quite faint in the distance. Because this is in the distance, I don't want the colour to be too strong. But it kind of gives depth. And now we're coming right to the foreground with the bigger trees. And you'll notice I've just done one line, a strong line, with my Payne's grey and Indian red mix. And then I'm using the liner brush to wash the colour out to give thickness to the trunk. It needn't be a straight line, it can be a stop-start line too, but the important thing is that you carry enough paint so you can move it with the liner brush and make the width of the trunk wider just with water. I'm moving the paint quite freely because I want there to be a contrast of shadows, and also I want the ground to be uneven. And so we can just use the side of the brush to give, on the rough paper, rough grain paper helps us with this. And so we can now see that the picture we started with, the one I had half finished at the beginning, they're both at the same stage. And so I'm going to go back to that original inspiration, the picture that started me off on this subject, and I'm going to take us to the next stage of defining more and giving more contrast to the image. So I'm going back to the main trees first, and you'll notice as I come down the trunk of the tree, we pay attention to the base of the tree and unite it with the ground in a way. The roots spread out under the ground, and often you see that the grasses grow up more at the base of the tree. So we don't just stop the tree trunk, we let it blend into the ground. And this is what I'm doing using my greens and also the blues of the bluebells, which are scattered around the foot of the tree. So I've got two brushes in hand, the liner brush there ready to use, and the number 4 mop brush just to add more paint where necessary. And this fallen tree in the first picture gives a little bit more interest, but we still can make our way under the arch to the trees beyond, and that's the whole thinking behind the composition of this picture. Again, more contrast on one side of the tree, the shady side of the trunk, if you like. And more blues and greens, because a bluebell wood sometimes can be a carpet of blue, but quite often it's a carpet of bluebells and green grass. And this is the impression I want to give here. I'm just reinforcing the trees further away so that the eye is drawn from the main trees in the foreground to the trees further away. And this mid-ground, which we haven't really done much with now, I want to add more impression of the bluebells, a swathe of blue running across the paper. And again, using both brushes alternately really to help me to do that. Of course, this process is speeded up as usual, 3 times the speed actually, but I hope it's clear enough for you to see the different stages and how we go back to reinforce the colour in some areas to add more definition and contrast. But using the yellow that we put on initially as the basis for the foliage, the new foliage of the trees. The colours are very gentle, but I like that. Now I think I have time to go back to my other picture, the picture we started on at the beginning of this video, and I'm tempted to carry on. Wasn't really thinking I would do this, but it seems to lend itself to going over some of the processes that we've just looked at a little bit more closely. And so we're going back to this theme of redefining and adding contrast. Same colour combination, Payne's Grey and Indian Red, just reinforcing those branches, creating new ones in some areas. This picture could take a lot longer. I'm just picking out the different stages for you, and you can spend as much time as you like adding more contrast, adding more branches. This is just to give you the basic step-by-step procedure. I hope it's working. I hope you get the idea. Let me know what you think. I always appreciate that. This second tree going in, which leads your eye through to the focal point. Just washing and adding more colour where needed. The blue of the bluebells coming into play again. It's important that you do have some contrast further deeper in the middle ground to draw your eye through. So I'm adding a little bit more detail here and working again on the middle ground with the swathe of blue, which are the bluebells. A sea of blue in the middle. If you do try this picture, obviously spend more time than I'm spending on it, but take the different steps and work gradually and just enjoy the process. That's what it's all about, really, the enjoyment. And now the paper is wet, I can spot in the blue and it will run along the areas which are wet and give us that lovely dotted blue appearance. Thank you for watching my video. I hope it's inspired you to have a go and try painting trees, woodland and the springtime. Now I have two pictures through the Bluebell wood, both of them just about at the same stage. We could do more work, we could do more detail and more contrast. But for the purposes of this video, I hope I've given you an insight into the different steps and stages of the painting. Please, if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe and leave any comments that you may have. Till the next time, bye.